Hey everyone, Rico Berg, realtor with Bridgewell Real Estate Group here in Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada. And for today's blog, I've brought on Paul Choi with Juris Notary to talk about kind of what's going on the real estate completion side of things, and just give you guys some more insight into important information about real estate completions and transactions right now. So, Paul, thanks for being here.
Hello.
Yourself.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Okay. Before I begin, I do want to just say that obviously it's an issue that's changing daily, literally daily. Some issues can be complex, and obviously these are kind of unprecedented times. And obviously, so the issues that we're dealing with is unknown, and it's new to everyone. So just do know that this is current as of April 17th, 2020. And that it can change, and that anything I do say is not to be construed as a legal advice, but it's just an info sharing, and that if you need legal advice, to contact me or any other lawyers directly.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think everybody really needs to understand that we're doing the best to provide everyone with information and the best information that we possibly can. But at the end of the day, every case can be so different. So that's so true. If you guys do have any specific questions, definitely just reach out to Paul directly, and he can kind of go through the ins and outs with you. Okay, so just in general, Paul, what are you seeing in terms of real estate transactions right now? I know real estate, typically for our businesses, we have a little bit of a lag because everything that we do, 1 or 2 months ago is what's actually coming in at this particular point in time. But our business is probably going to be affected in maybe 2 months down the road or something like that. So what are you kind of seeing for the future of real estate completions based on number of transactions and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, my business, obviously, being a focus in real estate, is kind of mirroring what you're seeing on your end as well, where, yeah, a lot of our deal has dropped. As you said, we have seen about 80 to 90% drop as well. And that we also have the lag, so that we have seen. I know that in March, beginning of March was busy, and then as it got more serious, starting kind of mid-March, everything kind of came to a halt. So that for our office, because there's that delay, it didn't actually stop then. We're starting to see it starting to slow down now. And starting May on, it's really slow, unprecedentedly slow. So that, yeah, I mean, definitely there has been far less sort of transaction going through our office as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe just in case people aren't aware of exactly when a notary or a lawyer comes into the real estate transaction, do you think you could kind of explain a little bit more about your job and what you do with regards to real estate transactions?
Yeah, for sure. So I know one of the questions that I'll touch on later on is, what we will recommend in this sort of situation. So this is where we'll talk about that a little bit. But our sort of job is to do a legal transfer of the title from the seller to the buyer. So that's the simplest way to think about it. You go through a realtor to sign an offer, essentially an agreement between the buyer and seller in how you want to buy or sell. So that's where you will discuss the actual prices and time and any other terms you want to talk about. So once you guys come to an agreement from there, obviously you might need to go to a mortgage broker and get a mortgage. You might need to go to an insurance agent and get insurance. And once all that's done, now when you're ready to actually legally affect the agreement that you came up with in paper, essentially, in a contract, we're the one who actually goes and do the actual legal transfer of it and carry that out, so that you do become, at the end of the completion date, the new legal owner of the property.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that I think that helps to kind of clarify things, because when we're talking about this real estate lag, how it impacts us is or you, for example, is in terms of completions. And so if we're not seeing, new accepted offers right now, or new buyers and sellers enter into the market, then that doesn't necessarily affect our completions right now. It affects our completions in a couple months. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
good to clarify. So you're there, and you are the one that facilitates completion and deals with all the legal documents for these clients. How has COVID impacted your business in terms of like how you're signing and things like that?
Yeah, so obviously it has changed quite a bit. And at the same time, we are still bound by the rules and laws that are in place. And we have to still kind of play within that rule. Because obviously we are essential service, we can and we're encouraged to stay open and serve the public. But obviously we try our best to reduce as much of attending our office as much as possible. And we try to do we can to do everything kind of remotely. We already do a lot of kind of getting the information and discussing as much as possible over the phone and email, so that you don't have to attend our office multiple times. Especially, of course, everyone's busy and they would prefer to attend only when it's required. So we kind of always had kind of a lot of electronic sort of things down. But with the rules and changes, we have made it so that any areas, new additional areas that we can do electronically, we are trying to do that as well. Some clients, of course, are still preferring to come to our office, which if that's what they prefer, we can obviously facilitate that as well. We do it so that we don't have clients coming in back to back, and we have reconfigured our office so that when you're in our office, that you can maintain the social distancing of 6 feet at all times, including our meeting rooms as well. We put up plexiglass, sneeze guards, and you're sitting way on the other end of the table.
Like a grocery store.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly, yeah. So yeah, we try our best to ensure everyone's safe, and all the sanitizations and protective gears and all that is in place.
That's good. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome that you guys are taking all those extra measures for people that do, really want to still come in, but also trying to accommodate and doing as much things virtually as you can.
Yeah, I mean, and we have a clients, if they really don't feel comfortable, we go to their car, we sign in the parking lot. So yeah, we are doing, and that's what's been suggested to us by our law society, and we go and have clients sit in the car with windows up. They'll just crack the windows so we can just get their ID, and we just pass through the papers through the cracked window. So that at least there isn't any sort of exchange of air in between us as much as possible. So yeah, I mean, worst case, we'll kind of do what we can.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was one of the really big things, is that obviously you guys have certain rules that you need to follow with regards to certain parts of the process really being in wet ink, right? And having actual pen to paper signing.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the tough part. So that's where recently LTSA, so that's the Land Title Office, that's the governmental agency that monitors and maintains records, official records of home ownership, property ownership in general in BC. And so they made an announcement that you can now sign their documents through video technology. So that you don't have to come into our office and sign. But you do have to know that these are more likely than not temporary exemption, and that once all this is done, that you'll be required to attend our office again. And the kind of the process that they laid out is that we have to get consent from the client to be able to do it this way. So of course we need their consent to do that. And the best practice is to record. So they also have to feel comfortable being recorded as well. And so the process might seem a little silly, but is that we're supposed to do kind of video conferencing like this. They're supposed to take out their ID, show front and back to show that it's kind of legitimate ID, so we can verify that as much as possible. And we have to actually compare your face with the photo to be satisfied that you are who you say you are. That's a kind of big thing that we do to ensure and deter fraud. and that we have to have sent you the files and the documents that you're going to sign in, that you would have signed in front of us uh, by email. You had to print that out, and we'll both compare. I'll have exact copy, you have exact copy, and we'll both compare that we have exact same copies. I'll explain everything that I need to, and then you will, as I witness you via video, sign that so that I can witness it. And then you send that back to me. Once I get that, then I compare again to ensure that it is still the same copy. Then I can sign on my counterpart on my copy, and then witness as such. And I have to attach a certificate to say why I couldn't meet the standard sort of rules, and that I am signing through this sort of exemption because of whatever the circumstance was, and I attach that. Then I forward that to my title office, and they'll be able to process it that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting, like for me to hear, because honestly, like I knew that video signings were being accepted, but I didn't know like the full ins and outs. So I think that's interesting to know like all the things you have to do. But I guess that like, obviously people have to understand, like it can seem silly, but there's obviously reasons in place for why people have to typically sign pen to paper. There's obviously reasons in place for why you have to do all these things, because we're dealing with like hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars in real estate assets is a big deal. It should be taken seriously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's typically, for most people, it's the biggest asset you have.
Yeah.
And so, we want to ensure, and everyone involved want to ensure that there is a confidence in a procedure that is there to protect you in case someone is out there to try to do something, that you don't want to do. Unfortunately, there has been situations where people have been defrauded, where you might have lost your ID, and then, you might have gone on vacation or something. Little did you know, when you came back, someone else is in your home.
Yeah.
I've said, you're in my home. And they go, well, no, actually, I bought this home. And it turns out someone has impersonated you, and have sold your home, or have gotten a mortgage, on your home, and, taken off with the money. These are sort of, guards in place for now. Of course, in the future, who knows what other sort of technology will be there to ensure that, we can prevent these sort of frauds. But for now, this is where the reason why you need to go to a notary or lawyer in person, and, verify your ID to say that, yes, I am actually the owner of this property, and that, I am actually agreeing to sell this thing. Because in addition to just verifying your ID, we're also verifying your what's called mental capacity, that you're signing this document, you are selling your home with your free will, not being coerced, or any other sort of against your sort of means, or your intentions.
Yeah.
So that we verify all those multiple things to ensure that you know what you're doing, you are actually doing what you want to do, and that there is no other issues that comes up later on.
That's a really good point. I think the mental capacity one is a big one as well, that a lot of people aren't really talking about as much as just like the physical ability to sign, like versus virtual. But I'm just curious, like I think that this announcement with LTSA, it benefits like a lot of issues with transactions for people that say like we're a foreign buyer that couldn't make it because of international travel bans right now to come and sign, or people that were in quarantine that couldn't make it to come and sign, even lawyers, right? Lawyers and clients that couldn't sign. So that kind of alleviates that. But I'm interested to know, like a lot of industries are talking about like moving forward, really embracing technology, and like, do you think that this is something that could potentially stick around, these video signings, or do you think that after things are lifted that we might kind of go back to more like face-to-face? It's just as an opinion, total opinion.
Yeah, no, who knows? Really, maybe that I would imagine that it will be depending on how it goes. As in, if couple of months of doing this thing, it turns out there's too many issues that comes up, where there's defrauds, or there is you know, any other sort of conflicts or, you know, deficiencies that comes up, that they realize that current sort of video conferencing or technology that's available aren't sort of satisfactory or efficient or sufficient to be able to meet the legal standards that you know, courts or you know, kind of that typical sort of legal field would like to see, then we might go back. But if they realize that, hey, you know what, we tried it, it seems to work pretty good, it seems streamlined, it makes sense, you know, that we allow these sort of freedom, given that people are more, you know, transient and, you know, can be, you know, working all over the world. And that, you know, it's part of the evolution of technology and the life that we need to continue on to embrace this technology. And so that if they allow it remotely, that'd be great. I mean, I'd be for it. But I do not know that because this is rushed, obviously, there's probably certain areas that will need to be revisited, reinforced, and just, you know, amended so that we can keep it for long term.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of putting it. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, no. Yeah, no.
But I really am curious, and like, I think that you're right. We're kind of in this stage where we're guinea pigs almost, and nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see how things go moving forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would be for, I mean, I'm always for technology. At the end of the day, you can't fight, you know, involve evolution of technologies and, you know, moving forward. And I have, you know, quite a, you know, good chunk of clients that are overseas or in different country or having to travel, and, you know, different things come up in life. So
Yeah.
if we can somehow incorporate the video conferencing, then it'd be good. You know, it is a complicated issue. Unfortunately, legal field is not always the fastest to adapt to new changes. They're very, you know, skeptical of a lot of things, and these are one of them. And one of the big thing, of course, that's been talked about among us is if we were to do this video signing and conference, you know, sort of recording, where does the privacy come in or confidentiality? Because the sort of recordings, of course, is confidential sort of information that we'll be talking about with our clients. That would typically be done in a privacy of our meeting rooms. But when we video record, some of the video recording companies, like sometimes Google and Facebook, you know, have little fine prints that says that they own everything that goes through their system. So this is where we kind of have to comb through, you know, every single sort of programs out there, you know, what's available, what's not, and, you know, if they keep some certain things where they stored, you know, is there, you know, a chance of it being, you know, penetrated by someone who is looking to get these information. So there are a lot more sort of things we do have to worry about in the background before we just jumping right in. So that, yeah, I think it will take a bit of time.
Cool.
Mm.
Okay. Well, one other thing that I really wanted to get to is just like getting people to understand exactly what it means if you're not going to complete on a deal. So like I've heard some horror stories where, you know, people are like, oh, you know, speculating that the market's going to go down, or, you know, they have an issue with being able to complete and they're just like, you know what, I'll just lose my deposit and I just won't complete. But I think that some people don't also understand that it's not just about losing your deposit. So can you kind of talk about that? Like that it's not just as easy to get out of a contract and that you're not just going to lose your deposit if you don't complete?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a common sort of common misconception that I know a lot of my clients have as well. Unfortunately, yeah, that's not how it works. As in that your liability if you breach a contract, if you don't keep your promise to another party that you have you know, made in a contract, it's not limited just to the deposit. Now, I don't want to say typically, but in some cases, given the convenience of buyer and seller just negotiating using the deposit, because it's money already there, you may not want to go through actual lawsuits and court system and go through the whole jazz. That you might just agree. I think some cases, in many cases, that's what end up happening, where you just go, okay, you can keep the deposit, and we walk away. We agree that we're not going to sue each other, and we're both relieved of any liability of this contract. We walk away, and that's because of that happens frequently, that there's that perception out there. But legally, that's not the only thing that they're liable. You may be liable for. Mm-hmm. Essentially, how the court and the sort of contract law and the legal system works around the sort of contract is that they'll always kind of look at what the damage that the other party sustained due to you breaching the contract. So they'll always assess what their damage was, and their damage might be more than the deposit. So I'll give you an example, and I give this example quite a bit to my clients, is that fairly recently in 2016, there was a deal in Surrey, so local, where a buyer decided to buy a home and, decided to walk away and said, I don't want to buy it. I'm just gonna, you can keep my deposit, and, I'm just gonna go do something else. And the seller decided to sue. And in 2017, what the Supreme Court decided and rewarded was $360,000 to the seller when the deposit was only $60,000. And they came up with that because the original contract was for 1.26 million. But once the buyer walked away, the seller relisted it. At that time, the market kind of dipped, in that he was only able to sell it for 910,000. So the seller's damage, loss, because you didn't keep your promise in the contract you signed, was not the deposit. That's not how they did it. It was the difference between what the seller was entitled to versus what they actually got when they sold it to someone else. Yeah. So this is where, you got to be careful. Unfortunately, you don't know what the other side damage is going to be at the time when you decide to walk away because of this reason, because they don't know what their damage is as well until they actually figure all those sort of things out and maybe reselling it. So this is where you got to be really careful as to how you decide how you want to proceed. Of course, if you have any safety or health reasons, that's something you got to consider. But this is where you do have to be cognizant and do know that it's not just limited to your deposits. And this is where that's what the situation you're unfortunately in, you really do need to go and get a legal advice.
Well, and I think, that's it's a great example. And like, just, taking everything into context with what's going on in real estate prices and how, that could be considered damages, given the current market. Like pretty much since November of 2019 up until middle of March, we were dealing with the seller's market and prices were going up. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody had sold at that time when the price was, say, $1 million, and let's just assume that prices are going to adjust in a downwards fashion moving forward because of finances and all these things, right? If that $1 million home, you have to relist it during COVID because the buyer doesn't end up completing on that property, is now worth, say, $900,000. Well, then it's the deposit plus that difference. So I think it's very relevant to what's going on in COVID, just because we were experiencing an uptick in the market, and now it's pretty likely that we're going to see it go the other way moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So no, that's really good to know. Yeah, so I think that I kind of just want to leave it there for today. Like we were talking offline for everybody else, like I think that we're going to be doing some kind of series moving forward. I think we've covered a lot of stuff today, so we can kind of go over other questions in the future. And if you guys have anything that you want to ask Paul generically, if you have a frequently asked question or you have something that you want us to include in our next vlog, definitely leave it down in the comments below. But if it's something specific, again, we recommend that you get, advice specific to you. So feel free to reach out to Paul anytime. But, just a send off, Paul, like, is there anything, I know this is kind of like an open send off, but anything that you really recommend to buyers right now, anything you really want to say just as like a ending comment?
Yeah, no, and obviously it is a very unusual sort of market we're in. It has affected all parts of our lives, including sort of real estate side of things as well. So that in this sort of unsure of times, I think it's more important than ever to try to get as much information as possible and try to prepare different things, whether it's financing or getting realtor involved or getting lawyer involved as soon as possible, so that there isn't any surprises as you go down, and be realistic about what you can buy or sell. And also, you do have to be ready to ensure that, like, for example, like your job, is it going to be stable? Is there any other sort of consideration you need to do? So perhaps more than ever, it might be important to just get pre-approval and getting lawyers involved as soon as possible. Even before conditions removed as is typical, and get advice on certain your specific situation, what your worries are, and how we can address that in an offer you're writing, and by way of including specific sort of clauses or terms that might help you to protect you that way.
Yeah, that's a really, really excellent point. And I think you're right. It comes back to, preparedness. And this time more than ever, it's about assembling your real estate team, regardless of whether you're thinking about buying or selling. That's also an excellent point. Like, a lot of brokerages right now are saying to include a seek legal advice clause in there. But if you, have someone like you on their side before you even write the accepted offer, then it's, another level of preparedness before that, and you can make recommendations and things like that. So that's a good point.
Yeah, because there is we can tailor it specific to your needs. Then we'll give you a better protection that way.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome recommendation. So yeah, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Again, my name is Mariko Berg. I'm a realtor with Bridgewell Real Estate Group. So if you are looking for real estate advice, information on the market, anything like that, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I have mortgage broker recommendations as well, and I am doing a mortgage broker series with John Chan from RBC that I will leave a link to, just in case you want, a mortgage broker on your side. And then of course, Paul's here for a notary and legal advice on your side as well. So feel free to reach out to us anytime, and stay tuned for the next vlog. Thanks so much, Paul.
Okay, thanks for having me. Bye, everyone. Bye.